It was a cool evening and Mia cleared her orders as they came. It was the usual rush hour at the restaurant, and Mia dedicated her time to serving all the customers. As the only black waitress in a restaurant owned and dominated by white folks, Mia worked hard every day to prove herself. On some occasions, she received and attended to customers who were unreasonably rude to her. Some wouldn't let her serve them because of her color. Though this often hurt her, Mia never dwelt on it. Instead, she let her kindness and free spirit shine through on such occasions. Soon enough, Mia won the heart of a frequent customer who had come to know her through her acts of kindness. That evening, Mia was almost rounding up her shift. She only had 30 minutes to go before finishing for the day. As she worked on her financial account for the day, she noticed the doorbell jingle, signifying the entrance of a customer. Mia looked up and saw an elderly disabled man wheeling himself into the restaurant. He was white and seemed to be in his late 70s. Mia's heart went out to him as he struggled to pull his wheelchair through the door. Without wasting time, Mia quickly rushed to his side to assist him. With genuine warmth, she helped him into the restaurant, treating him with the utmost care and respect. The man, who introduced himself as George, was deeply grateful. He was already used to doing everything himself, so he was deeply touched that a total stranger would go out of her way to help him. For Mia, it felt like an honor. Kindness and hospitality were her second nature, and she never hesitated to help anyone regardless of their color and race. Mia's shift had ended already, but she didn't hesitate to serve George whatever he wanted. She gave him such VIP treatment that he wouldn't stop grinning from ear to ear. Mia stayed behind after she had served him, ensuring George got everything he wanted. When it was time for him to leave, Mia gleefully wheeled him out of the restaurant and helped him get into his car. George was so grateful that he promised to return the following weekend. When he did, Mia treated him with warmth and kindness. She simply saw him as a father figure. Mia could tell that George had been through a lot in life. Although he had a bright smile, he also had the saddest eyes she'd ever seen. So Mia made up her mind to put a smile on George's face whenever and wherever she could. Only 2 weeks later, George arrived at the restaurant as usual, only to be stopped at the entrance door by the new no-nonsense manager named Harris. According to Harris's odd excuse for stopping him, George's wheelchair was constituting an obstruction for other diners to freely walk in and out of the restaurant. So he harshly ordered George to leave and never return to the restaurant again. George just sat back in his wheelchair, staring up at Harris in a mixture of confusion and humiliation. "All right, since you don't want to leave on your own accord, I'll have to ask the guards to throw you out," Harris bellowed. George, who was now close to tears, was too shocked to even move an inch. He had never been this humiliated because of his disability. To him, no one in their right mind should ever be that rude to a disabled man like him. But Harris was a quintessential racist, and he wasn't bluffing. "Guards," the new manager shouted at 2 guards nearby. "Please throw this disabled thing away from here," Harris ordered. The men, who were more than willing to impress their new manager, swung into action at once and strode toward the visibly scared George. The guards were already closing in on George like a pack of hyenas on prey when a voice thundered, "Anyone who touches this poor man will have to come through me." Everyone involved in the unfolding drama and within earshot of the mean baritone voice, including George himself, turned sharply toward the direction the voice came from to see who the speaker was. And who else but Mia? Mia had been observing the whole unfolding drama, and she came rushing over to George's side as soon as she saw the guards storming towards him. By then, George was already shivering from fear. Mia immediately put her arms around him and said, "It's okay. I'm not going to let them hurt you. You're safe." Her presence immediately gave George the much-needed sense of comfort, and he felt hugely relieved at once. As for the 2 guards, Mia's bone-chilling countenance immediately stopped them right in their tracks, with both of them looking right from Harris to Mia and back. Harris recovered from his initial shock in time. Then, in a bid to win back the situation that was already slipping right away from his fingers, he thundered at Mia, "You're fired. You can now leave the restaurant with your disabled friend." Mia's eyes popped open as soon as she heard those words. Fear gripped her as she realized the consequences of losing her only source of income. That would send her family into a state of misery as they all depended on her for survival. Putting aside her own troubles, Mia gently wheeled George away outside the restaurant. George wasted no time at all in consoling Mia. He first profusely thanked her for her kindness in coming to his defense. But at the same time, George also made it quite clear to Mia that she shouldn't have sacrificed her job for his sake. Mia, who was clearly trying very hard to put on a brave and happy face, just told George not to worry about her, that she was fine. But Mia wasn't fine. As soon as she helped George into his car and he drove away, she found a lonely corner by the back of the restaurant and let it all out. She sat there alone and cried for what seemed like ages. Afterward, Mia stood up and headed home, where she continued her sobbing. If only she knew fate had other plans in store for her. Just 2 days later, Mia received a call from the restaurant secretary. She immediately directed Mia to resume her duty at the restaurant. Mia couldn't believe her lucky ears. It happened that one of Mia's female colleagues, Karen, had captured the whole drama on her camera phone. Karen had a vendetta against Harris. She wasn't pleased with the rules he'd been setting ever since he assumed the position of manager of the restaurant. The restaurant owner, Thompson, was incredulous that someone he had hired as a manager could be so rude to a disabled man. Without delay, Thompson contacted his lawyer, David, who visited the restaurant the next day to rectify the situation. Harris was terminated, and the deputy manager was promoted. Additionally, Thompson instructed that Mia be reinstated to her position immediately. This led to Mia miraculously regaining her job, much to George's delight when he learned of her good fortune. Time flew past, and one evening George wheeled into the restaurant, hoping to have a good meal and a warm conversation with Mia. But he was shocked to find her in a far corner of the restaurant, looking quite moody. George wheeled closer to Mia and asked her what the problem was, but she replied that everything was fine. George knew Mia so well by then, so he probed further. Finally, Mia relented and told George that she had just been evicted from her apartment. She had been sharing the apartment with a friend and couldn't afford the rent since almost all her salary went into caring for her sick children. Unluckily for Mia, her friend and roommate had moved out of the city 3 months prior in search of greener pastures. And since Mia couldn't afford the rent all by herself, she had been forced out of the apartment and out on the streets. George pitied Mia and tried his best to cheer her up and tell her that everything was going to be fine. 3 days later, Mia accepted a small package from a courier service. Casting a curious glance at it, her fingers trembled slightly as she tore open the wrapping, unsure of its origin. Nestled inside, among layers of tissue paper, were a set of keys and a neatly folded note. Mia's heart skipped a beat as she recognized George's elegant handwriting. Perplexed, she couldn't fathom why George would send her keys. No matter how much she pondered, she couldn't find an explanation. Could it be that George was back in town? Was he around the corner? Did he need her to run some errands back at his place? Hence the keys. Was he requesting to meet with her privately? All these thoughts rummaged through Mia's head as she fumbled with the note. With trembling hands, she unfolded the note, her eyes scanning the words with a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. My dearest Mia, it feels so right to do this. You've been an amazing friend and companion for years. You've gone out of your way to show me extreme kindness and hospitality, even when you didn't know who I was. As a token of my appreciation, I leave you the keys to my house. I believe this will help with your housing issue. Continue to be good. With love, George. George's words echoed in her mind, expressing heartfelt gratitude for her kindness and offering the keys to his house as a token of appreciation. Overwhelmed by the gesture, Mia felt a lump form in her throat as tears welled up in her eyes. She couldn't believe it. George was offering his house to her for free. Mia felt her breath leave her as she struggled to grasp what was unfolding before her. How was it possible for a stranger to entrust such fortune to her? Yes, Mia understood that she had shared beautiful memories with George for years. They had experienced good times, warm conversations, and she had gotten so much sound counsel from him. But Mia still didn't think that all that was enough to entrust her with his house. Besides, they weren't even related. Filled with a sense of gratitude, Mia managed to stifle her excitement as she was still on her shift at the restaurant. She would head over to the house first thing after her shift and confirm for sure that she wasn't dreaming. After her shift ended, Mia wasted no time. With the keys clutched tightly in her hand, she made her way to the address George had provided. The anticipation gnawed at her insides as she navigated the familiar streets, each step bringing her closer to her destination. As she stood before the imposing duplex, Mia couldn't help but feel a sense of awe wash over her. The house stood as a testament to George's generosity, a beacon of hope in her darkest hour. With trembling fingers, she inserted the key into the lock, the soft click resonating in the quiet evening air. As the door swung open, Mia stepped into the warmth of her new home, her eyes widening in disbelief at the sight that greeted her. The spacious interior was bathed in soft golden light, the air fragrant with the scent of fresh flowers. Every corner seemed to radiate with warmth and welcome, as if embracing her in a comforting embrace. Though the house was hers now, the sweet flowery fragrance peculiar to George still hung in the air. Overwhelmed by emotion, Mia sank into the plush sofa, her heart overflowing with gratitude. In that moment, she realized that her life had been forever changed by an act of kindness, a gesture of generosity that had touched her soul in ways she could never have imagined. How she was suddenly promoted from a homeless waitress to a homeowner overnight baffled her beyond words. Despite her newfound wealth, Mia found herself longing for George's presence at the restaurant. However, he was nowhere to be found, leaving Mia puzzled and yearning for closure. It felt like he had just disappeared into thin air. Every week, Mia looked forward to seeing George come through the doors of the restaurant. She looked forward to helping him settle in and get his usual orders. And above all, she longed for the warm conversation they shared each time he graced the restaurant with his presence. Days swiftly turned to weeks, and still, there was no sign of George. Mia was filled with concern and worry. She prayed and hoped that everything was okay with him. Even with her newfound wealth, Mia didn't stop working at the restaurant. She had come to love the job, and she loved to see the joy on people's faces as she served them. Mia drowned herself in her work to reduce her worry and concern about George's well-being and whereabouts. A year and a half later, a lawyer named Michael walked into the cozy restaurant where Mia worked. Spotting Mia, he approached her with a somber expression, indicating he needed to talk. Mia, wiping her hands on her apron, welcomed Michael to a table and waited anxiously. Michael introduced himself as George's personal lawyer. Mia's heart sank as she braced herself for bad news. Michael didn't beat around the bush. He told Mia that George had passed away. Shock coursed through Mia, and tears welled up in her eyes. George had been such a significant part of her life, his sudden absence felt like a gaping hole in her heart. As Mia struggled to process the news, Michael explained that he was there to read George's will. Mia nodded, her mind reeling with questions and emotions. Michael began to unfold the details of George's life, painting a picture of a man who had endured immense hardship. George, Michael revealed, was once married to a wealthy woman. However, tragedy struck when they were involved in a devastating car accident. Mia listened intently as Michael described how George survived the crash but was left paralyzed and emotionally scarred. The accident shattered his world, leaving him confined to a wheelchair and haunted by PTSD. Despite his physical limitations, George showed remarkable resilience. He took charge of managing his late wife's business empire, relying on a trusted team to oversee operations. Mia marveled at George's strength, imagining the challenges he must have faced while grappling with his own trauma. However, fate dealt George another cruel blow when he was diagnosed with end-stage liver disease. Mia couldn't imagine the weight of such a prognosis on someone who'd already endured so much. As Michael spoke, Mia's admiration for George grew, realizing the depth of his resilience and strength. She marveled at how he was still able to carry on with his late wife's chain of businesses, even after being crippled by the fatal accident. Even with PTSD, George still carried on with life with a smile on his face. But as the years passed by, George knew that a time would come when he would have to leave his wealth to an heir. He'd been childless, so there was no one who would inherit the family's fortune and business. He didn't trust any of his relatives, so it wasn't even an option for him. As time went on, George battled with the thought in his head. Beyond being smart and knowledgeable, George needed someone with empathy and compassion. someone who wouldn't get carried away with wealth and treat others like trash. George had initially intended to leave his wealth to his caregiver, Susan, but betrayal shattered that plan when Susan absconded with a significant sum of money. George had trusted her because Susan had been there to care for his needs after his wife had passed. Unfortunately, and unknown to George, Susan had wormed her way into George's heart in order to win his trust. When that happened, Susan proceeded with her plans to abscond with money worth $50,000 with her lover. Disillusioned by the betrayal, George found himself at a crossroads, unsure of who to trust with his legacy. Though he quickly found another replacement for Susan, he could never trust a caregiver anymore. Then fate intervened once more when Mia entered George's life. Her genuine kindness and unwavering support touched his heart in ways he never thought possible. Through their friendship, George found solace and companionship amidst his pain. Grateful for Mia's kindness and friendship, George made the heartfelt decision to leave his entire estate to her, along with a substantial sum of money. It was his way of expressing gratitude for her unwavering support and a testament to the profound impact she had on his life. Before he passed away, George had returned to his countryside home to spend his final days. He knew that his days were numbered, so he had planned to spend the final days in solitude. With his will written and ready, George was certain that he could die a peaceful death. As Michael concluded his narration, Mia was overcome with a mix of emotions: gratitude, disbelief, and profound sadness at the loss of her dear friend. But amidst the sorrow, there was also a glimmer of hope. The knowledge that George's legacy would live on through her, and that his kindness and generosity would continue to touch the lives of others. And so Mia, once a humble waitress, found herself inheriting not only wealth but also a profound sense of purpose. She vowed to honor George's memory and continue spreading kindness and compassion in a world that sorely needed it. With a heavy heart yet renewed determination, Mia embarked on the next chapter of her life, forever grateful for the gift of George's friendship and the lessons he imparted. With her newfound wealth, Mia went ahead to give her children the proper care they needed. She ensured they had the best education and a safe, loving home. Mia also bought a 6-bedroom mansion in the heart of the city for her family. She swore that none of them would know suffering anymore. Finally, in honor of George, Mia built an academy for the handicapped. In her academy, she sought to share her mindset that everyone is equally important in society and deserving of equal rights and opportunities as everyone else. The academy flourished, becoming a beacon of hope for many disabled individuals who had previously felt marginalized by society. Mia's dedication to her work at the academy and her commitment to her children brought her immense satisfaction. The lessons she had learned from George about resilience, kindness, and the power of giving continued to guide her every decision. Mia's children thrived in their new environment, excelling academically and participating in various extracurricular activities. The mansion was not just a house, but a home filled with love, laughter, and the echoes of the values George had instilled in Mia. The community around them began to notice the positive changes and the impact Mia's academy was having on people's lives. One day, a prominent journalist visited the academy to write a feature story about Mia and her journey. As Mia shared her story, the journalist was deeply moved and promised to help raise awareness about the academy's mission. The article was published in a renowned newspaper, and soon donations and offers of support poured in from all over the country. Mia was overwhelmed by the generosity and realized that her work was just beginning. With the increased funds, Mia expanded the academy, adding more facilities and hiring specialized staff to cater to a broader range of disabilities. The academy became a model for inclusive education and empowerment, attracting visitors from other states and even from abroad. Mia often thought of George and how his simple act of kindness had set off a chain of events that changed so many lives. As the years went by, Mia's reputation as a compassionate and dedicated advocate for the disabled grew. She was invited to speak at conferences, share her experiences on talk shows, and consult with policymakers on improving accessibility and inclusion for disabled individuals. Each opportunity allowed Mia to honor George's memory and ensure that his legacy lived on. One day, while Mia was at the academy, she received a surprise visit from an old friend, Karen, the colleague who had recorded the video that led to Harris's dismissal. Karen had been following Mia's journey through the media and was inspired by her accomplishments. They spent hours catching up, reminiscing about old times and marveling at how far Mia had come. Karen said, "You've become a beacon of hope for so many people. I'm so proud of you and everything you've achieved. George would be incredibly proud too." Mia smiled, her eyes brimming with tears. "Thank you, Karen. I couldn't have done it without the support of friends like you. George's kindness gave me the strength to keep going, and now it's my turn to give back." As Mia continued to build on her successes, she never forgot the struggle she had faced as a single mother and a black waitress in a predominantly white establishment. She used her platform to advocate for equal opportunities and fight against discrimination in all its forms. Mia's story became a powerful testament to the transformative power of kindness and resilience. Years later, Mia was honored with a prestigious humanitarian award for her contributions to society. During her acceptance speech, she recounted her journey and the pivotal role George had played in her life. She dedicated the award to him, acknowledging that his act of generosity had not only changed her life, but had also created a ripple effect that touched countless others. As Mia looked out at the audience, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had fulfilled George's wish and continued his legacy of compassion and empathy. The academy thrived, her children excelled, and Mia herself had become a symbol of hope and strength. She knew that as long as she kept George's spirit alive through her actions, his kindness would never be forgotten. In the end, Mia's story was not just about inheriting wealth, it was about inheriting a responsibility to make the world a better place. Through her work at the academy, her advocacy, and her dedication to her family, Mia ensured that George's legacy of kindness and generosity would endure for generations to come.